Today we're taking a look at 13.1, which is talking about perimeter. Now this is the same type of perimeter that you talked about last year. Perimeter doesn't change throughout the whole course of your schooling. So let's take a look. We're on page 497, and this is what you'll see. Now, when we're talking about perimeter, we're going to be talking about quadrilaterals for the first little bit. Eventually we're going to be talking about shapes that have extensions of quadrilaterals on them, so they might have two rectangles together or a rectangle and a square together, but we are talking about quadrilaterals, so they're going to have four sides. Now we're also going to be talking about quadrilaterals that are rectangles or squares. They have two sides that are the same length, and that's how we're going to be able to find the perimeter of these shapes. So let's take a look at our problem. It says Julio is putting a stone border around his rectangular garden. The length of the garden is 7 feet. The width of the garden is 5 feet. How many feet of stone border does Julio need? Now, when we think about perimeter, I want us to think about a fence. In your backyard, you might have a fencing around your house that keeps things in, and we're trying to figure out how much fencing that we're going to need. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about area. Now, when we talk about area, it's like the grass that's in your backyard. So all of that green space that's inside of the fence is our area. Our perimeter is just the fencing around it. So, like we're seeing here in this problem, he's putting a border around his backyard or around his garden. Now, when we find perimeter, all we're doing is adding up all of our lengths, which is probably what you did last year. You just added all those numbers up. So if there's a 7 over here on this side, we're going to put a 7 over here on this side, and there's a 5 here on the bottom, so we're going to put a 5 here on the top, because these two sides are the same length, and these two sides are the same length. It's a rectangle. It has two pairs of sides that are different lengths. So when we find our perimeter, the perimeter of a rectangle is length plus width plus length plus width. So if we add all those numbers up, we're going to find our perimeter. So 7 plus 5 plus 7 plus 5, that would be 10 plus 14, so we'd get 24 feet. The perimeter is 24 feet, so he needs 24 feet of stone border. Now, there's also an equation that we can use when we're finding our perimeter. Notice, we have two 7s here, and we have two 5s. So, the formula that we can use when we're finding a perimeter would be P for perimeter equals 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. So let's take a look over here. We have 2 times the length, 2 times the width. Here's a different problem. We have another rectangle. The length is 12 centimeters and the width is 8 centimeters, and we need to find the perimeter. So what they show us here is we're taking 2 times 12 and then 2 times 8. 2 times 12 is 24. 2 times 8 is 16. And when we add all of those up, we would get 40. So it's 40 centimeters. And again, this is our perimeter. It's like the fence that goes around your yard. Now, that's with a rectangle. Notice how we have two sides that have different lengths. When we take a look at a square, we know that a square has four sides that are all the same exact length. Notice we have 16, 16, 16, and 16. So when we're finding the perimeter of a square, which has the same length on every single side, we can multiply times 4. So off to the side, we're going to multiply 16 times 4. And 6 times 4 is 24. I put my 4, I carry my 2. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 2 more is 6. Now, just like we did up here, to find our perimeter, we can always add all of those numbers on the outside up. Or we can look at our formula, which looks like this for a rectangle. And when we have a square, it would be P equals 4 times the length. Our length and our width are the same. All right, let's go ahead and move on to your next page. Now again, this problem is taking a look at our formula where we have our perimeter equals 2 times our length plus 2 times our width. Notice we have our parentheses around it. I wrote it before like this. This, when we have a number and a letter together, that's multiplication right here. We can also write it 2 times our length plus 2 times our width. You can write it either way. It's important, though, that we do put a parentheses in. Okay, so let's take a look at our problem. We have width and we have length, and we have a rectangle. It is 18 meters wide and 14 meters long. So I'm going to plug in my numbers into my equation. 2 times 14 plus 2 times 18. Off to the side, you might need to do that multiplication. 2 times 14 is going to be 28. And 2 times 18 is 36. And then all I have to do is add those up together. Always add off to the side. Make sure that you are adding correctly so you don't make any silly mistakes. And I get 64. So the perimeter is 64 what? 64 meters. I always have to add whatever my unit of measure is into my perimeter. Okay, so there we go. We have our formula. We have P equals 2 times our length and 2 times our width. And our question down here, number 1, asks, can you use the distributive property to write the formula P equals 2 times L plus 2 times W another way? Now, we learned about the distributive property before. Let's take a look at this problem and see if you can figure it out. Take a second and see if you can figure out how I would write this using the distributive property. Now, when you're writing it using the distributive property in this form, you are going to have a number on the outside and then something inside a parentheses. This is a distributed version of it. Okay, let's take a look. If you wrote this, you would be correct. Now, what this shows us is that I can first add my length and my width together. I can add those two things, and then I can multiply it by 2. I can do it either way. I can multiply each part by 2 and add it together, or first add and then multiply. Either way, I'm going to get the same answer. Let's take a look, and I'll show you that that's true. Over here, if I add 14 plus 18, 4 plus 8, or 8 plus 4 is 12. I put my 2, and I carry my 1, and I get 32. Now I'm going to multiply 32 times 2. I had my length and my width, and I added them together, and then I have to multiply it times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6. So you'll notice either way, I get 64. I can use this as my formula as well as this or this. You have options of which formula you like better. But I want you to start using this formula and not just adding all those numbers around. So pick a formula that you like, whether it's this version here or either of these two versions, and stick with that throughout the rest of this chapter. Let's take a look at some practice. Okay, now we have our first problem, and it's asking us to write it using our formula. So P equals 2 times our length plus 2 times our width. And this is a cursive L for those of you that might have been confused. If we just write an L, sometimes it looks like a 1, and it might confuse us. So when we're doing our math, we might want to write a cursive L, just so that we can tell the difference. All right, now we need to plug in our numbers. We have a length of 8 feet, and we have a width of 4 feet. So I'm going to plug those in. 2 times 8 plus 2 times 4. I'm going to go ahead and do that math. 2 times 8 is 16, and 2 times 4 is 8. And when I add those together, I get 24. Now, I always have to add in my unit of measure like it's asking me to do here. So this would be feet. And down here it's 24 feet. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm talking about. I could be talking about shoes, or I could be talking about houses. I need to add my unit of measure. All right, let's take a look at our next one. Now you'll notice that there isn't a lot of room on your paper, so you might want to use some scrap paper for this, especially when you get over to this problem right here where there's a little bit bigger numbers that we're working with. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at this problem, and I see 16 and 4. And I know that 16 and 4, if I add those together, I'm going to get 20, and that's a really easy number for me to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the formula P equals 2 times length plus width here, because I know when I add those two parts together, it's going to make it really easy for me. So 4 plus 16 I'm going to rewrite my formula. P equals 2 times 4 plus 16. P equals 2 times 20. And I know that 2 times 20 is equal to 40. So P equals 40 yards. Now, you could have also used the other formula and multiplied 16 times 2. And if you did that, you would have gotten 32, multiplied 4 times 2, and you would have gotten 8. And 32 plus 8 is equal to 40 as well. So you can choose your formula. In this case, this formula worked really nice and easy for this problem. Then I didn't have to multiply 16 times 2. All I was worrying about was 20. All right, let's take a look at our next problem. And I'm going to do the problem over in this area over here since I'm running out of room. And then we'll go back to number 4, which is the square. All right, I have some big numbers here that I'm working with, so I need to make sure that I have room to work out the problem. I have my formula, P equals 2 times L plus 2 times W, length times width, 2 times my length and 2 times my width. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and enter my numbers in. P equals 2 times 42 plus 2 times 110. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my work. P equals 2 times 42 is going to be 84 plus 2 times 110 is going to be 220. And then I need to add these parts together. So P is equal to 304. Now, I would advise that we would go off to the side, 84, 220, and add down. Make sure you are adding with your numbers all nice and lined up. 2 plus 8 is 10, and that's how we get 304. So the answer to this one for our perimeter is 304 meters. Okay, take a look at our last problem. You'll notice that our length and our width are exactly the same. What type of shape does that mean we have? It means we have a square. So I can use my formula, P equals 4 times my length for this problem because I have a square. So now I'm going to fill in my L. P equals 4 times 4. And when I do that, I know that 4 times 4 is 16. So P equals 14 meters, and that is my answer. Okay, what I want you to do is go ahead and finish this page and do the multiple choice question on the back, and then you can go ahead and get started on your homework. Tomorrow we're going to learn about area. All right, guys, have a good rest of your day.